I'm pleading the Fifth until I speak to my lawyer.
Upon the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer your question based on my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution.
I plead the Fifth.
Did he tell you where he was on the day McAllister was murdered?
I plead the Fifth.
You've seen it before, at least in Law and Order type shows, but we've never seen a former president plead the Fifth, refusing to testify under oath for that clear, legally provable fear that he might incriminate himself in crimes. And Trump is known as a talker, but he basically spent 6 hours today refusing to talk or tell his side of the story under oath. That's after losing a long quest to avoid ever having to face this Attorney General, Letitia James. She's leading the civil probe here, which can still have potential criminal implications like any thorough probe.
President Trump cannot avoid justice in the great state of New York. My investigation is civil in nature. However, in the event that we uncover any conduct or activities which would suggest criminal activities, then that would change, obviously, our investigation.
That's true. It's part of why legally someone could even plead the Fifth in this context and that Trump could do it today. There has to be a credible risk that the witnesses' answers could be used against them as criminal evidence or even to criminally indict them. Now, Trump does face that risk because we already know there's overlapping topics about his finances and his company that have gotten other people indicted. I know a lot's been going on this week, but it wasn't that long ago that you had his top financial officer handcuffed, indicted, awaiting trial, which is now scheduled for this year. But Trump himself has done those depositions under oath before. In fact, he's been in more lawsuits than any candidate in American history. USA Today did a count. And he's answered many questions in depositions. Today, though, he basically stated his name under oath. You couldn't claim that answer would be legally incriminating. But then for all of the questions about his own conduct and his business, he kept pleading the Fifth and saying some version of, quote, same answer again and again. Over the course of the day, we are told, according to reports, he did that for about 6 hours. Now, his coup lawyer, John Eastman, pled the Fifth more than 100 times facing the January 6th committee and also found himself, what you see on tape there, searched, also under a legally authorized plan by a judge. In his case, the feds were searching for a cell phone. That search of that guy who pled the Fifth, well, actually looks a little bit small compared to the whole Mar-a-Lago operation. The legal point here is that while neither Congress nor a civil probe can even prosecute someone in the first place, they can uncover the kind of testimony, criminal evidence, or smoking gun evidence that can get you in trouble or indicted. As for this civil case, they already say they have evidence of Trump and his organization basically lying about his finances. In a civil matter, that can lead to fines. It can lead to the kind of restitution that deals with the fact that they may have misled authorities or gotten to pay less taxes while other people paid more than their fair share. All of this builds on the testimony that you might recall Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, provided to Congress. And while Trump is not a legal expert or a very credible source on many of these matters, at the broader level, by doing this, he also faces criticism about the hypocrisy because he has long attacked anyone taking the Fifth, something he pressed when people linked to some of his opponents had pled the Fifth.
You see, the mob takes the Fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment?
Your staff taking the Fifth Amendment, taking the Fifth, so they're not prosecuted.
Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. Horrible.
I'm joined by John Flannery, a former federal prosecutor and advisor as counsel to several congressional probes. John, some people look at everything that's happened and say, it's one more nick in the armor. Is it that big a deal? Other people say, no president has ever left office and done this. The fact that Donald Trump and his lawyers think that he has grounds to plead the Fifth Amendment today, do you view this as just one more thing or judging him by real standards, a new low?
I think it's both historic and is going to bite him in the hindquarters when the dust settles. And this is what I mean. We've been talking about the Fifth Amendment as if this is a circumstance for the Fifth Amendment. And the Constitution reads that nor shall any person be compelled in any criminal case, this is a civil case, to be a witness against himself. So the question is he being a witness against himself. So this is not a criminal case. You invoke the Fifth Amendment, But because it is a civil case, they can draw adverse inferences from you taking the Fifth Amendment in that civil case.
Right, and we discussed that a little bit earlier in the program, and that basically it's important because it is your right, and it comes out of government abuse that they can't just grab you, force you to say stuff or whatever under their interrogation, and then use that against you. Here, that's not the case if it's civil. But there are people who look at this and say, well, yeah, so much has happened with Trump. It seems to me, John, now I'm going to do the leading question. You're familiar with that. It seems to me.
Yes, I am.
If Barack Obama left office, was dealing with a case, first of all, defied it for so long that he had to be fined $100,000 just to get him in the chair, and then pled the Fifth Amendment, it seems to me a lot of people would tell us it was the biggest, worst thing that had happened that decade.
Yes, well, I said the entire history of the United States. And here's the thing about the adverse inference. If I'm asking him a question, and this is why he sat there 5 or 6 hours, you have to ask the question that you may try to draw the adverse inference on in the civil case. So you say, isn't it a fact, Mr. Trump, that you understated the value of your properties in connection with your tax filings? He takes the fifth. Isn't it a fact that you overstated those same properties for the purposes of getting loans? Then he goes to trial, or they offer that evidence and considering how to go forward. And the adverse inference is when you didn't answer that question, you, in effect, seem to agree to it. Because if I say, are you a crook? And you say, I take the fifth, the conclusion is you are a crook. Now, it's interesting also how he deals with it, which I think gives away the tell that you talk about. Well, my wife and I, we have pigs, you know. Well, if you pick up one, they squeal like mad. And he's been picked up and he is squealing like mad, like Spiro Agnew did when they investigated and indicted him. But Spiro didn't have to take the Fifth Amendment, and this guy does. And when the mob does it, they usually do it in a criminal case, but it doesn't work out for them. Vito Genovese in 1958, he took the Fifth Amendment 150 times. And I think Trump far eclipsed his number. And the following year, he was convicted and went to prison for 13 years. So this is not a great track to be on. This is historic. This is dangerous for him personally. This is a good thing for the country because we're having a reckoning, whatever the outcome. And I hope the outcome is what appears to be the case. A man who fights and resists to talk and tell his story in this context in a civil case doesn't have a story to tell that is other than inculpatory, I think.
All really laid out clearly, and as you say, you said all of history. It is really striking. The fact that there are those who want to minimize and normalize that which has never happened before, because even if it's your right, nobody else has left office and then said, yeah, I can't talk about that, obviously, because I might have to tell you the truth about my crimes. That's a biggie. That's a biggie. So we end with, in a way, John, to combine some of what you said with some of what we do around here, a kind of a notorious PIG. Good to see you.